So I was having a browse at some of the comments on my video about Syria and the Douma chemical attack. The comments were unfortunately disappointing but not surprising. I say disappointing because to me it reiterates just how many people out there are willing to um, endorse the industrial scale Kremlin narrative that is out there. Um, I'm not going to make this too long. I need to be aware of space, but there's just a few things I want to discuss regarding my approach to to such comments and some general thoughts on Jeremy Corbyn and my concerns around his leadership, particularly thinking of international affairs. I must admit that I'm a little drained by all of this. I find myself getting very frustrated and saddened and flabbergasted, really, by the sheer number of people who will always, always, always blame this country first, no matter what the situation. Um, and I'm not talking about Russian or Iranian nationals, I'm talking about Britons. Um, it's just very hard to understand. So I want to be absolutely clear about my own stance, but I mean, this is really just for the record. I don't really care what people think of me. I my track record speaks for itself insofar as how I approach comments. If you look at my channel, if you I've got something like 2,000 videos, over 2,000 videos. Now the fact is, on the vast majority of them, I leave the comments open, and I have a proven track record of allowing dissenting views. But that doesn't mean that I have to tolerate comments that are just directing vitriol and abuse towards myself. I remove those comments because I don't believe in giving such people a platform, but it's for another reason. I think it's a waste of my time to get involved in verbal mudslinging with them. Occasionally I do, and sometimes I regret it because it's just time consuming. It's tedious. That's honestly the feeling. Now, one or two other comments were slightly more mature. I happen to believe they're wrong. Because it comes down to, people are saying, oh, the mainstream media is, it's all part of an agenda. I guess really what it comes down to is what do you believe? I happen to believe that the Assad regime is responsible for some heinous war crimes in Syria. I believe the Assad regime has been brutalizing the Syrian people for 7 years. I believe the Assad regime has been engaged in a campaign of collective punishment. Anyone who opposes Assad is a terrorist. Russia has shamefully endorsed this narrative. Now, Syria is not a very big country, so Syrian state media doesn't have the power to have international repercussions. Russian state media does. What we have seen, particularly around Skripal poisoning, but going back a long way, Russia is very, very effective at sowing up mistrust, sowing disinformation, promoting conspiracy theories, you name it. Anything that will weaken the West in terms of information is good for the Kremlin. So this is being used as a weapon. And when I see people endorsing that, I must admit, I feel very, very frustrated. Um, the internet being what it is, people say a lot of things, and I'm as guilty as anyone. I've accused people of being Putin stooges and so on. So be it. I admit that because I believe at this time, with our country under blatant prolonged this propaganda assault from Russia. I mean, the Putin apologists imply that it was Britain that started this. It wasn't. Russia started this when they chose to carry out a nerve agent attack on our soil. But I'm really, really not interested in trying to change the minds of people who are so down that rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. I know I'd be wasting my time with them. So the only thing I care about is saying what I believe, standing up for my conviction. To be quite honest, I don't make these videos. I mean, obviously, I don't want negative responses, but I don't make the videos to please people. So if you don't like my channel, why waste time here? I've seen people who are critical of my channel come back and back and back. I don't understand that logic. Do they think that they're going to change my mind? Are they trying to get under my skin? What is it? Very strange. I mean, to me, it would be better if they just go to one of those Putin worshipping channels. Because if you look at RT channels, it's very interesting. There's no dissenting comments. These people think that they're being enlightened by talking about mainstream media. Well, here's what I would argue, right? I've never ever said that you can't criticize the BBC or CNN. I've been vocal myself. I can think of many reasons to criticize them. And I can think of many reasons to criticize the American government, especially under Trump. No one can accuse me of being a yes man for Trump. And no one can accuse me of being subservient to the Conservative Party. In fact, only 2 videos back, I was very vocal about the way the Tories treat disabled claimants. So no one can pinpoint me down as being a stooge for anyone. But the right to criticize and the need to have, for example, an opposition that asks questions. Let me put it this way: Vince Cable of the Liberal Democrats questioned the government. He put forward questions, but he did not go to the point of towing the Russian narrative. That's the problem with the Corbyn response. Because whenever you have a body or a government or a dictator who's anti-Western, you can be damn sure that Jeremy Corbyn will be playing the devil's advocate for that person. I mean, that's a man's track record. So, however important the questions that Jeremy Corbyn raises on the domestic front, this is a man who is not fit for number 10 because he has consistently backed those who are against his country. I mean, this is just common sense. This is not something that just look at the man's record. If you are a reasonable, centrist minded, moderate person, look at his record. And you don't need to be a conservative to be very wary of it. Corbynites, there's a personality cult around Jeremy Corbyn, that's very obvious. Corbynites believe that all criticism of Corbyn, all criticism, is a Tory plot. And they believe that he can do no wrong. And he has his foothold, as the Labour Party leader. It seems to be solid at the moment. So I don't think he's going to go anywhere. And that for me is very concerning because the country needs an effective opposition. Well, people will say you have a clear right and a clear left, so politics is the way it should be. But people like me feel somewhat in a wilderness because I'm not a Tory. And there's many areas I dislike the Tories very much on, particularly, for example, the treatment of disabled claimants. But I also care deeply about this country, and I cannot vote for a man whose track record has been to always support those who are um, against this country. Or, I mean, the man's a complete hypocrite. And this is one of my biggest issues with Corbynites. They preach about compassion and human rights and these sort of things, but they go out of the way to defend Putin and Assad. Assad is a blood-drenched dictator, and Putin is a corrupt autocrat. I mean, where do you even begin? Where do you even begin? I'd have to make a 10-hour video to to even scratch the surface of just how absurd the situation is. It's surreal, actually, to see what's happening here. That you have a powerful country like Russia waging a propaganda war against this country, and instead of recognizing it for what it is, you have people lining up to play the devil's advocate and they say, oh, well, it's all a mainstream media agenda against Russia. And they will not look at the history, they will not look at the facts. All they will do is churn out conspiracy theories. Just a quick point about this idea, oh, it's all this chemical attack was a fabrication for an American war in Syria. I've news for you. There's already a war in Syria. It's been going on for 7 years. It's claimed 500,000 lives. So waging a war in Syria, there's already a war in Syria. That's the absurdity of their argument. But those people they talk as if they're pacifists, but turning a blind eye to a murderous dictator committing atrocities against his own people, that's not a pacifist position. So there's a real self-righteousness with them. Like, they point to those who are critical of Assad as being warmongers, but they're the ones who are saying are actually insulting the victims of this by churning out the line it's fabricated. Even even if you think that Assad wasn't responsible, to actually endorse the line it's fabricated, it's a false flag. I've heard that one. It's disgusting, quite honestly, because it's smearing the men, women, and children who were victims of this. Now, thinking logically, why would the rebels commit this in their own the area that they control, putting themselves at risk? That makes no sense. To manufacture this sort of war warfare, would require a laboratory. I mean, look at the situation. They're in bombed out ruins. How can they? It just when you weigh everything up and when you really think critically, which means not listening to everything RT tells you, then common sense dictates that Assad was most likely responsible. People say, well, America wants influence in the region. Yeah, of course it does. But why is that surprising? But why is so does Russia? So does Russia. And people who point fingers at the West always ignore Russia's agenda in the region. So really, what I'm saying is, if you come to my channel and throw personal insults at me, I'm under no obligation to keep your comments. I do allow comments that disagree with me, but don't expect me to get into a long back and forth because I say what I need to say in the video, and I really, really, I never make videos to please people. That's something that anyone watching this needs to understand about me. I make videos just as a platform for my opinions. That's it. And if people support and agree with me, that's great. Thank you. But I don't do it for that purpose. So to those who come and accuse me of all sorts of things, I don't care. I really, really, really don't care. But it's interesting, because often I'll click on their channel and they have nothing. So these people call me names, but their face